Jen comes to a mysterious hypnotherapist to help her overcome her depression, and after going to some sessions, she realizes that he is manipulating her mind. So today on Cinema Recapped, I'll show you Hypnotic. The film begins with a woman who is very scared because she feels that someone is following her. She calls the police, but no one answers the phone. She gets on an elevator when she suddenly receives a call from a stranger. At that moment the elevator stops and the woman sees how the walls start closing in until they end up crushing her. Then we see another woman who has just arrived at a party, where a friend introduces her to a therapist. He greets her and gives her his card in case she ever needs his services. Then the woman, named Jen, goes outside for a moment to take a breath when suddenly her ex-boyfriend, who is also at the party, approaches her and says that he misses her a lot. Jen tells him that it was not his fault that they broke up, and that she is just a bit confused. Then, the ex-boyfriend asks her if he can take her home. Jen accepts and they end up in bed. Jen talks to her friend the next day about what happened last night, and her friend tells her that she should go to therapy with the doctor she met at the party, so that her life can improve, because it seems that she's lost. Jen ends up going to see the therapist and tells him that she does not feel motivated to do things, and that she also drinks a lot and does not sleep well. The therapist asks her what is the reason for all this, but she does not know for sure. The therapist asks her to tell him about her ex-boyfriend, and Jen tells him that they had a life together, they were getting married, and that they were going to have a baby, but then she had an abortion, and therefore she could no longer maintain her relationship with him, so they broke up. The therapist says she needs an hypnotherapy session, since that's helpful for people who have suffered trauma. Jen accepts and the therapist begins the session by asking Jen to relax on a couch. After 1 hour, Jen wakes up and does not remember what happened during that time, but the doctor tells her that she did good. 3 months later we see that Jen has made a lot of progress and has even found a new job. Jen does yoga with her friend and tells her how well she is doing. That night she goes to sleep and dreams that she is sleeping with the doctor in an unknown house, but she wakes up and just forget about it. The next day she runs into the doctor in the shopping center and they meet for dinner. That night, Jen asks him about his life, and the doctor answers that he had a partner, but she died. The doctor asks how she is doing with his ex-boyfriend, to which Jen replies that she has been avoiding him, but the doctor advises her to talk to him to clarify things once and for all. Jen calls her ex-boyfriend and invites him to dinner. Then she goes to the store to buy things for dinner when suddenly someone calls her on the phone, and at that moment she becomes paralyzed, and we see that she goes from being in the store to sitting in the dining room of her house. Jen gets up from the chair and looks around when suddenly she hears someone complaining in the bathroom, and when she goes, she realizes that her ex-boyfriend is choking because he ate something he is allergic to. At the hospital, Jen and her friend are worried about her ex-boyfriend's health, but also because she doesn't remember anything that happened in the course of the store until the accident. But her friend tells her that maybe it's because she's in shock, although Jen knows that is not that. Jen goes to therapy and tells her doctor that she is worried about that lost time in her memory, but the therapist tells her not to worry. Then Jen asks him if it is not a consequence of the hypnotherapies, and the doctor answers that if she doubts him, she will not overcome her fears, and therefore she will not be cured soon, so he asks her to trust him. Jen goes home and when she was in the kitchen she realizes that there is a ticket on the table of what she bought in the store that night, so she takes it, and sees that she bought the ingredient to which her ex-boyfriend is allergic to. Jen looks through her things and finds the ingredient there, so at that moment she begins to remember what happened after being in the store. The doctor called her on the phone and told her to light the fire, as if it were an order. So after the call Jen went to the store and bought the ingredients, and then made the food and asked the ex-boyfriend to eat with her, but all this as if she were under the influence of hypnosis. Jen starts to investigate what are the effects of hypnotherapy, and realizes that there are some cases in which the therapist takes advantage of this to make his patients do all kinds of things. Then she also realizes that there have even been crimes, so she prints out all this information and takes it to her friend. However, she tells her that she does not think it is real, or that at least it is not the case to the therapist they are both going to. Jen tells her that she is having the same symptoms as other people who have been manipulated, and also tells her that she has investigated the therapist, finding out that he does not have employees or an address where he sleeps, that there is only his department where he gives the therapies. Then she tells her that she investigated the background of the therapist, and that in the past he had a patient who denounced him for harassment, so they gave him a restraining order, and 2 days later the girl appeared dead due to heart problems, but that she believes that the doctor had something to do with it. Finally, Jen tells her friend about the doctor's call in the store and what she did without consent, so the friend ends up believing her, and they both go to talk to the policeman who took the case of the girl who died because of the therapist. Jen tells the policeman that she is going to therapy with the same doctor, and that she suspects that he is doing the same thing he did to the other girl. The policeman shows her some photographs of how the girl died. He also shows them some recordings of a security camera where they can see what happened to the girl in her last moments. We see that the woman is the same from the beginning of the film, who was crushed by the walls of the elevator. Then we realize that the call that the woman received when entering the elevator was from the doctor, and that probably at that moment he manipulated the woman's mind so that she thought that the elevator was crushing her, so the woman ended up dying of fright, and other people thought it was a heart attack. The two friends get scared and go home, but Jen decides to see the therapist for a hypnotherapy session, but in this case, she leaves her cell phone recording audio to see what happens when she is hypnotized. So at the end of the session, Jen goes to her car and listens to the recording, and realizes that the therapist asked her some questions and found out about everything, because when she is hypnotized she tells the whole truth. So she told him that she was recording, that she knew about the woman from the past, that she had gone to the police, and that her friend also knew. Jen calls her friend to warn her that the doctor knows everything, but her friend does not listen to her, because she was waiting for the call of some investors, and answers an unknown number, thinking that it is them, but it's the doctor. He gives her an order, and the friend begins to see that she has a spider in her sweater, and she gets so scared that she ends up having a car accident. The detective goes to talk to Jen, and they chat for a moment about the things the doctor did, and then he leaves. Jen takes some documents that the detective left her, when suddenly there is a knock on the door, so she opens it thinking that it was the police officer again. However, it was the doctor, so she tries to close the door, but he manages to enter and gives her the order to stop moving, causing Jen to be completely paralyzed. The doctor approaches Jen and tells her that everything he does it's because he loves her, and that she should not be afraid of him. Then he tells her that he's going to go after the detective, because he is only going to mess things up, and then he leaves after telling Jen that she could move again. Jen closes the door and tries to call the detective to warn him, but he does not answer, because he has the phone unloaded. Then we see the policeman calmly watching TV, when suddenly a woman, who is also a patient of the therapist, comes out from one of the furniture, and attacks him with a knife, because she is being controlled by the doctor. The detective fights against this woman and ends up beating her, although he is seriously injured. Jen visits the detective at the hospital, and tells him that she has an idea to end the doctor. She tells him that she will assist another therapist to help her remember what happened in the sessions with the doctor, so they can have evidence to put him into jail. Then Jen goes to a lady who is a therapist, who will help her remember. However, when the doctor tries to hypnotize Jen, she begins to not be able to breathe. Jen sees some memories, and then wakes up very upset. The therapist explains that the doctor put locks on her, so that no other therapist could hypnotize her. Then the therapist offers Jen to put a trigger on her mind that will help her in case the doctor tries to hypnotize her again. Later, Jen goes home and starts investigating with the information she saw while she was hypnotized, and realizes that the doctor had a teacher who taught him everything he knows, so Jen decides to look for this teacher. When she arrives at the house where the teacher lives, she meets the doctor. He tells her that his teacher was actually his father, and that he has already died. Then he orders Jen to go to sleep. Jen wakes up after a while, and calls the detective to tell him everything, and also tells him that she is locked in the department where the doctor gives his therapies, so the detective sends several policemen to rescue Jen. At that moment the doctor enters, and tells Jen that she looks a lot like his old wife. The police officers come to rescue Jen, but they realize that there is no one there. Jen wakes up again and realizes that she is actually in the doctor's house, and that he played with her mind, so she would give a wrong address to the police. Then the detective, who was on his way to where the other policemen were, realizes the deception and changes his course towards the therapist's house to rescue Jen. The doctor tells Jen, who is paralyzed, that he implanted false memories in her, so that she would think that she was his former wife, and that's why Jen had dreams about him. The policeman arrives and makes noise with the door, so the doctor realizes that he is inside the house, and decides to go look for him. The detective and the doctor run into each other and begin to fight. At that moment Jen manages to remove the paralysis from her body, and runs to help the policeman. However, when she arrives, the doctor orders her to sleep. Jen gradually falls asleep, but first she takes the gun and points it at the doctor, and ends up shooting without knowing which of the two she hit. Then Jen wakes up next to the policeman. He tells her that she hit the doctor, and that everything is over. Jen hugs the detective, and at that moment the police calls her my love. At that moment, Jen remembers that the other therapist told her through hypnosis that if she heard those words, she would come out of the hypnosis she was in. Jen then comes back to reality, and realizes that who she is really hugging is the doctor, so she separates and hits him, and then runs out of there. She goes to where the detective is lying, who tells her that he has another weapon in the ankle. Jen takes the gun, and when the doctor comes, she kills him. A month goes by and we see that Jen is making progress, that her ex-boyfriend is improving in health, and that the detective received a promotion. The end.
If you liked the video, please leave a like and subscribe to continue receiving the recaps of the best thriller movies. I hope you're doing okay, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.